Good morning. Today, as well as the next couple days coming forward, we will be studying the maamar, Va'ata Tetzaveh. But before we actually begin to study the maamar and the amazing ideas that are found within it, I want to explain to you a little bit about what a maamar is. A maamar is essentially a Chasidic teaching, Chasidic philosophy, starting from the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, the first Rebbe of Chabad. The most profound ideas, mystical, Kabbalistic, but most importantly, profound and meaningful, were taught through maimarim, that is plural for maamar. Throughout the history of Chabad, there were changes in style, there were changes in mannerisms, but the basic way of teaching Chasidus was through maimarim. Let's take our Rebbe, for example. The Rebbe would hold farbrengens on a very regular basis. At these farbrengens, we would speak about all sorts of things, what was going on in the world, Talmud, Rashi and Chumash, many, many different things, and many different styles of speaking. But all of those are referred to as sichos. You could call them speeches. A maamar was special. When the Rebbe would teach a maamar, he sang it. It was in a very special tune. Oftentimes, it was preceded by a beautiful song in order to get everybody into the correct mode. When the Rebbe would teach his siches, he would be looking at the crowd, talking to the people. When he taught a maamar, he was staring off into space, as if he was being inspired from some other world. Maamars, maimarim, are unique. They're a very special way of teaching the most profound ideas. This maamar is especially unique. First of all, it is mugah. Now, what does mugah mean? The Rebbe said, and I don't know the exact number, I'm going to make it up, but it's a good approximate, close to 2,000 maimarim. He taught us almost 2,000 times very profound Hasidic ideas. But the Rebbe did not write his own work. The Rebbe always spoke it. It was not in a written form. It was taught to the people, spoken. There was a group of men, scholars, brilliant people, who, after each Farbrengen, would write down everything that the Rebbe said. That's a whole nother conversation for another time, quite interesting. And so it was not only with the sichos, with the speeches, but with the maimarim. They would write down the maimarim, trying to get almost word for word exactly what the Rebbe said. Out of those 2,000 maimarim, and again this is an approximate number, about 200 of them were edited into being a written form, then given to the Rebbe, who would edit it even further to make it exactly the way he wanted, then return to this group, who would put it in with all of the new edits that the Rebbe gave, and then they would return it back to the Rebbe, and he would edit it even further. And these were called mugah, which means edited. So that's the first thing that's special about this maamar, is that it is a maamar which is mugah, a maamar which was edited by the Rebbe, which means that it came out exactly the way the Rebbe wanted it. The second unique thing about this maamar is that after it was printed, the Rebbe asked that it be printed in a special booklet, and then he gave out with his own hand to the Hasidim close to 10,000 copies of this maamar. I happen to have one in my home that I received from the Rebbe. Hindi has one as well. But what makes it most unique is that this was the last maamar that the Rebbe was magia. And as such, we look at it as if it were a will. We look at this maamar as if this were the Rebbe's will for us, that when he would go to heaven, he would leave for us this teaching to live with until Mashiach comes. So there's a lot of profound ideas, but in addition to profound ideas, these are the ideas that we live with for the past 32 years. This maamar is full of amazing thoughts, full of amazing things, but you will see when we study it why this maamar is so particularly special. I want to add that I would like to add that this maamar, as almost all of the Rebbe's maimarim, are based on maimarim of previous Rebbes, of Rebbes before him. Very often on the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. This particular maamar is based on a maamar of the previous Rebbe that he said in 1927 on Purim Katan, when there are two Adars. The second Adar is when we celebrate Purim, but on the first Adar, we celebrate a mini Purim, Purim Katan. This was a very particular time in Jewish history. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was living in Russia immediately following the Russian Revolution, and he was wanted and ultimately brought in to be put to death. The two things that he was asked not to do and that he was willing to give his life for, number one, was making gatherings, large gatherings of people, and specifically to teach Torah. Number two was teaching children Torah. Yet, on this Purim Katan 1927 in Moscow, the Rebbe gathered a large group of Hasidim, knowing full well that among those Hasidim were going to be spies for the communists, listening to every word he said. He said many harsh and strong words, asking and pleading with his Hasidim to be willing to give up their very lives in order to teach Torah, and specifically to teach Torah to young children. The maamar that the previous Rebbe said at that Farbrengen is the maamar that this particular maamar is based on. I'm looking forward to spending the next couple of days going over important points in this maamar. We're not going to study it cover to cover, but we're going to see very profound and important points that hopefully will make a major impact in your life, and you will begin to understand why this maamar is so important to us, the Rebbe's Chasidim.